No one noticed the old sniper hiding in the forest, until he hit his target and revealed the secret of the bear fight. The Cascade Mountains of Washington State, with their misty mornings and seemingly endless pine forests, held both the beauty and mystery of nature. In this mountainous terrain, where harsh winds whistled through the trees, 5 Special Forces soldiers moved silently forward. Their footsteps faded into the moss-covered ground, and their breaths were heard only through their earpieces. This was no routine reconnaissance mission. It was a shadow hunt where risk and death intertwined. The man leading the team was Vic Malone, known for his gray hair and furrowed brow. But the soldiers called him by another name, Wolf Father. Even from his nickname alone, one could imagine what he might have experienced in the past. The old model camouflage uniform he wore blended almost seamlessly with the natural surroundings, and the rifle with a scope on his shoulder seemed like an extension of his own body. He was silent, disciplined, and possessed an almost terrifyingly sharp intuition. The faint wolf tattoo on his arm seemed to want to stay in the shadows, even in the sunlight. No one asked about his story. To ask would be disrespectful, and to know would be unnecessary. Vic spoke not with words, but with his actions. Jake, the youngest member of the team and the sniper, was one of the few who wondered more about him. Jake was an academy graduate, brimming with theoretical knowledge, but still learning the language of the Real Forest. The weight in Vic's stance, the message in his silence, caught Jake's attention. Every step was deliberate. Every glance seemed to scan the surrounding area. As if the forest itself was whispering information to him. And that tattoo, it was more than just a wolf. Perhaps a unit, perhaps an oath, perhaps the mark of a loss. That day was one of those misty mornings in July 2025. The air was cool but tense. The team was tracking an enemy reconnaissance unit. Using thermal scopes, they estimated the enemy group consisted of 3 people, but in such missions, no estimate was certain. When the bird songs suddenly fell silent, the team went on high alert. Silence in nature meant only one thing: something was approaching. Suddenly, a flash erupted from between the trees. An enemy sniper had targeted the team from an elevated position. Anything could happen in the next few seconds. Before Jake could raise his binoculars, Vic's gun was already on his shoulder. His finger wasn't on the trigger, it was an extension of time itself. A single shot echoed through the depths of the forest. The birds took flight again. The enemy lay on the ground. The sniper scope around his neck still glowed. The team turned to Vic without even breathing. There was no expression of victory on his face, only determination. He stroked the wolf tattoo on his arm. For a moment, the tattoo seemed to become more distinct. As if it had come alive again with a memory he was recalling. "Continue," he said simply. His tone was neither commanding nor emotional. It was as if he were part of a greater mission, a greater silence. Jake's mind was filled with questions. How could this man, despite his age, be such a cool-headed sniper? Could this reflex, this calmness, be explained by training? Or was something being hidden? Throughout the journey, Jake couldn't take his eyes off Vic for a moment. Steps like shadows, eyes flowing like the wind. Who was this man in the past? And that wolf tattoo, perhaps it belonged to a story as old and untold as the silence of this forest. After the clash, the forest returned to its former silence. The wind swirled through the tops of the pine trees, slowly dispersing the tension in the heart of the mountains. The team remained cautious, even though the enemy had been silenced. No one spoke, they followed Vic's signals. But Jake's mind was still on that single bullet. When the team returned to the campsite, night was falling. The campfire burned slowly, sparks climbing upward and blending into the starless sky. Jake finally lost his patience. He approached Vic with heavy steps. The man was calm as usual, cleaning his rifle, brushing the dust off the metal without even lifting his eyes. "Vic," Jake said, his voice firm but gentle. "That shot. It was so fast, so perfect. How did you do it?" Vic paused for a moment. He glanced at Jake, then rolled up the sleeve of his camouflage jacket. Despite the dim light, Jake immediately noticed, around the tattoo, just beneath the skin, was a faint metal ribbon. In the center was a wolf's head and a star, with a faded date written below, 1968. Jake's eyes widened. 1968 was one of the most intense, bloodiest years of the Vietnam War. As Vic lowered his arm, he simply said, "Reflex. Years of reflex." Then he silently stood up and walked away. It took a moment for him to blend into the night's shadows. But something had awakened inside Jake. Vic's composure despite his age, his aim, and the date on his tattoo, none of it was ordinary. He didn't sleep that night. He went to his tent, accessed his tablet, and logged into the military archives via an encrypted connection. He typed in, "Victor Malone Vietnam." At first, nothing came up. But after changing the filters and refining the search, a report caught his attention. 1968, South Vietnam. An American sniper had infiltrated enemy lines with a small unit, saving the lives of 50 American soldiers. The mission report was incomplete, and the names were censored. But one detail was clear: the leader was known by the nickname Wolf Pack and had a wolf tattoo on his shoulder. Jake's heart began to race. At the end of the report, the leader's name appeared clearly only once: Corporal Victor Malone. The pieces began to fit together in Jake's mind. Vic's silence, his tattoo, his perfect marksmanship, his disciplined demeanor. These were the traces of a legend, a ghost. The next morning, the fog had not yet lifted. The team was busy gathering their belongings. Jake walked to the spot where Vic was sitting alone, disassembling his rifle. He took a deep breath. He had gathered his courage. "Vic," he said, his voice trembling. "I did some research last night. In 1968, there was a wolf pack in Vietnam. Its leader saved the lives of 50 soldiers." Vic paused but didn't look up. Jake continued. "Were you the one? Were you that leader?" Vic slowly placed his rifle on the table. He turned his eyes to Jake. There was no anger on his face, but seriousness sat like a mountain. "Yes," he said, in a voice almost as soft as a whisper. "But those days stayed in the forest, Jake." Jake swallowed. "What about the sniper? According to the legend, you took out 3 enemies with a single bullet. Was that possible?" Vic didn't answer the question directly. He bowed his head, as if the weight of the past had settled on his shoulders once more. Then he simply said, "Back then, there were different rules. We were different people." There was no answer, but there was no denial either. Jake stepped back silently. But from that moment on, not just his, but the entire team's view of Vic changed. They no longer saw him merely as an experienced leader, but as a savior who had fought against darkness in the past. War shaped people. But some people shaped the war. And Father Wolf continued to walk silently through the forest. Jake began to watch Vic. He noticed the focus in his aim. Every movement, every breath. It was as if he were still on a battlefield. Jake asked the team leader, "What do you know about Vic?" The leader paused for a moment. "Victor Malone. He's been with us for years. He's a quiet man. But his aim is so flawless, it's like a legend." Jake told him about the medal and the shooting incident. The leader looked surprised. "A medal? Are you sure?" Jake nodded. The leader added, "Once, he shot an enemy with night vision, and no one understood how it happened." Jake dove into the archives that night. Vietnam War records, newspaper clippings, censored reports. In 1968, a jungle operation had gone awry. The sniper had taken down the enemy with his commando unit, saving 50 soldiers. His name was in the files, Sergeant Victor Malone. Jake felt his heart racing. Uncle Vic was Sergeant Victor Malone. But why didn't anyone know this? Why was he leading in the jungle? In Jake's eyes, Vic was no longer just a leader, but a legend from history. He couldn't keep this truth to himself any longer. He started talking to the other soldiers at the camp. At first, only a few people heard. Vic was actually the sniper who led the wolf pack in Vietnam. But the news spread by word of mouth. Everyone began to piece together the fragments of the old man's past. At first, no one wanted to fully understand. Because Vic was quiet. He didn't put himself forward. But then, his old shots, the accurate bullets he fired in the dark, began to be talked about in every corner of the camp. One of the young soldiers, recounting how Vic had hit a target 300 meters away without blinking during night training, said, "He's not just a man, he's a legacy." One morning, a visitor arrived at the campsite. An old soldier with gray hair, walking with a cane. His name was Sam Anderson. He had come after hearing Vic's name. His eyes were tearful, but he was trying to stand tall. "Is Victor Malone here?" he asked. Jake greeted him. "Do you know him?" Sam nodded. "Know him? In 1968, we were trapped in the forest. We were surrounded like wolves. The enemy was all around us. But then someone appeared. He took aim and cleared the way. That was Malone. That man saved me." The camp fell silent. Sam sat by the fire and began to tell his story. His eyes drifted off into the distance, but his voice was clear. It was the middle of the night. Hot, suffocating, the smell of blood and gunpowder. We had gone underground. If we came out, we'd be shot. But then a gunshot rang out. One shot. Then another. And another. Within 5 minutes, it was silent. A man emerged with his gun. He had a wolf tattoo on his arm. Our eyes met. In that moment, I realized I owed my life to him. That man was yours. As Sam spoke, the camp fell silent. Everyone turned to Vic, their eyes filled with tears. Vic said nothing. He simply bowed his head slightly. But from that moment on, the atmosphere in the camp changed. No one looked at him as just an instructor or a soldier anymore. Vic had become a legend. A week later, the base commander requested that a demonstration operation be organized for training purposes. The aim was to boost the morale of the young soldiers. Vic reluctantly took to the stage. He was wearing his usual plain camouflage, but his eyes were different that day. In his hand was a sharp sniper rifle that bore the marks of years of use. The target was 500 meters away. The wind gently swept through the forest. Vic knelt down, took aim. After taking a deep breath, he pulled the trigger. The bullet struck the target's exact center. The crowd fell silent. Then applause erupted. The young soldiers realized they had witnessed a legend. Some wiped away tears, while others recorded the moment on their cell phones. "Kurt Baba is still with us," someone said. The next day, Jake pulled a small note from his pocket and handed it to Vic. The note contained only a few words. "The team is proud of you." Vic took the paper, glanced at it briefly, then silently put it back in his pocket. He smiled slightly. "Maybe the wolf is still running here too," he said. From that day on, the soldiers gave him a new nickname, Wolf Leader. This title said more than his uniform ever could. There was leadership in silence, honor in the past. The local base command asked Vic if he wanted to display his medal. Vic didn't answer for a long time. Finally, he just nodded and donated his old binoculars along with the medal. This binocular had been a companion that had walked with him for years, witnessing many targets. On the day of the ceremony, another elderly soldier stepped forward with a faded photograph in his hand. "You saved my team in 1968, he said. "We were just kids back then. Now we're here. Thanks to you." Vic remained silent for a moment. Then, perhaps for the first time, his eyes welled up. The hands on his shoulders, the applause, the memories being recalled. It all showed one thing: heroes don't always shout. Some just take aim, and quietly make history. Have you ever met someone like Vic? Someone who carries honor in their silence, history in their gaze, someone who simply takes aim and acts heroically.